everyone, and welcome once again to one of our Hobby Memorial Library events. We are very excited to continue our Surviving Adulthood series, and who better to talk about banking than two of our professors, Professor Elizabeth Bobe and Professor Alan Falkenstein, and they will go ahead and give us lots of great information, and I'm going to need to take notes on this one too. So welcome. Welcome, and thank you so much for visiting with us today. And just take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. And so let me go ahead and share our screen. I will say that it was a there was some learning information for myself as well. So it's just really
Yeah, me
interesting
too.
all the things out there. Okay. All right. So, surviving adulthood finances. This is maybe how you might feel. Just
It's
going
so cute.
through all of just all the juggling. I mean, there's definitely, I think, no matter the age, just finances and banking in general can be a little intimidating. So hopefully we can enlighten you today. So first and foremost, keeping track of your funds. So I don't know how many people might be familiar with this, but like I know my grandmother like literally would put money under her mattress, and that was just like, oh, that's like the safe place, right? But fortunately, we have banks, and they can really help us keep track of our funds, and just maybe a little bit more organized, and just keeping track of the funds that are coming in, the funds that are going out, and just making sure that you have a really good plan in place. I feel like that's the biggest thing, is to plan your finances. So let's talk a little bit more about banks. So banks generally, I say generally because unfortunately in the past couple years, we've seen like some drama around banks, and just some scams and just little things like that have happened. But in general, we look at banks as trusted financial institutions, to just hold our finances, especially when the bank is considered insured by the FDIC, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. That's a mouthful. But basically, they just say, hey, look, if something was to happen, like we've seen here in the past couple years, where banks are like, "Hey, we're not making it and we close down," your money is still safe. So even though they don't really have your money, it's backed up by the FDIC. So it's like, okay, your money is still safe even though that bank is going under, your money is not. So that's really important to make sure when you're considering banks, like, hey, is this bank insured by the FDIC, and am I going to make sure that my money is safe? And then within banks, we have like all the several type of bank accounts. And so this is definitely by no means an extensive list, but just two of the main types of accounts. We have checking accounts and savings accounts. And generally, if you go on like a banking website, you'll see that they'll have like basic checking and basic savings. You'll probably see some other options there. They get a little fancy with the like, oh, plus checking and certain types of savings, but the very basic accounts are checking and savings. And so with a checking account, this is generally going to be the account that you use for like everyday expenses. So this is like, okay, this is maybe the money that I'm going to spend for groceries and for gas. And so just the money that you plan on spending. Where your savings account is exactly that. It's the money that you plan on saving. There's even sometimes accounts that people will make where they're like, hey, I'm going to put money in this throughout the year. And then at Christmas time, I'm not like trying to get all my money together. Like that was like my Christmas savings account. So, savings account generally, are used for like growing your money as well. They'll usually do like an interest rate on there, whereas checking accounts generally don't have interest rates, although there are some exceptions, where savings account will have interest rates usually. They might limit your withdrawals because this is a savings account. So they might say, hey, you can only take out this amount of money, or this many times do a withdrawal per month. Also, they might have like a minimum required, and that could be in checking accounts as well. So you really want to make sure that you know the ins and outs of all these accounts so you don't get penalized. Also monthly fees. That's something definitely to look into, because they are providing a service. They're keeping track of your funds, right? They're giving you a means to keep your funds in there and to, we'll talk about this in a second, but like use a debit card or use checks to pull the funds out. Um, an example is I was at a business recently and I tried to pay for cash and they said we don't take cash. Well, if I didn't have my debit card, then I would have been stuck and not been able to pay. And so that's sort of kind of the norm now, is that it's expected that most businesses will take a debit card. So because they're offering us a service, we have to keep in mind that there's sometimes a fee for that, right? Sometimes it's just like, hey, we have your money, and so that the invest that in certain ways to make gains, but sometimes there's a monthly fee. So making sure to just be aware of those fees and making sure you have the funds in your account to cover those fees.
Oh,
Picture, there it
oh,
goes.
there it is.
Alright, so Donald Duck saying, "One for you, one for me." So I felt like, okay, this sorta kinda is like bank fees. They're like, "Here's some, the money you put in the account, here's some of what you get to keep of that money, and we're gonna take a little bit," if they are taking bank fees. Um, and fees can come in a lotta, different forms, so you'll wanna read what all type of fees that those accounts might have. But a monthly maintenance fee or like a service fee is just saying, "Hey, again, like, we're this institution, we're holding your money, and we're giving you access to use that money conveniently through like a debit card or checks." So you want to keep an eye on that. And sometimes those accounts will waive that fee if you have a minimum balance. So if they're like, hey, if you at least keep this much in your account, like a daily balance or an average daily balance, we'll waive that fee. So just sort of thinking ahead and planning, if that's an account that you're using down to like the bare minimum, then you might want to just consider a different account. Overdraft fees. So many times when you go to pay for something, right? If you didn't keep track of that money, you might not have the money to cover that. And so, depending on the bank, sometimes they will cover the transaction and then charge you an overdraft fee. Sometimes the transaction will process, but then it'll reverse. And that can add even to more fees because whatever company that payment was reversed on. So, let's say, like, I go to a business and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, here, go ahead and charge it." And then my bank says, "Hold on, this person doesn't have the money. We need, we need that money back." Then I can get a fee from that business. If it's checks, it's called a bounce check. And then my bank also says, "Hey, you didn't have the money. Like you swiped without knowing, without having that money." And so you can get a fee there too. So a lot of times banks will say, "Hey, we'll waive that fee, one or two times." So just making sure you're keeping track of money, but also what happens if you don't have the money there. ATM fees. When we go to an ATM machine, if that ATM is part of your bank, so you see, like, let's say you bank with Chase and they have a Chase ATM, then usually there's not going to be a fee there because it's within the network of that bank. But let's say I go to like a Bank of America ATM, then many times it will charge me a fee because it's not in my banking network. I know that there's banks that will reimburse you. So they're saying, hey, don't worry about it. If you go in and the closest ATM is not in our network, it's okay, we'll reimburse you. So just looking at those different little perks that you can possibly get with certain banks, or just making sure you plan ahead if you're not going to have that covered. And it's like, okay, I know I'm getting this $20 out, but with fees, it's going to be $21.50. So this is funny, maybe not if it's ever happened to you. It says, "Heard you went below your minimum balance, so we charged you a fee for not having any money, then charged you another fee for not having any money to pay the fee. We charged you for not having any money." So I actually have a personal story about this. When I was in college and I decided, yes, I want to move out and live on my own. And I had, just my first apartment, my money management skills, combined with my lack of a greater income, just led me to using money down to the nitty gritty. And so I thought I knew that I had just enough money to go and buy milk. And I had not an iguana. I can't think of it. I had a pet lizard at the time, a chameleon. I had a pet chameleon at the time, so I stopped and bought him crickets, and they're like cents, like literally, like it's like oh, how 5 cents per cricket at the time. So whatever my bill was that night between the milk, it had to be under $5. Well, guess what? I didn't have enough money in my account. So that was some very expensive milk and some very expensive crickets because I got charged a $30 insufficient funds fee
Ouch.
once I went negative. So just keep in mind, right, that you want to make sure that you're tracking your money. Don't just assume. And with most bank accounts, you get a debit card with checking accounts. You can also get them for savings accounts as well with some banks. But you'll have the option to have this debit card, and it looks very similar to a credit card. Um, You'll see even like the logo there, the payment processing network. So on this one, you see the logo MasterCard in the very bottom right-hand corner, but then above it, you see where it says debit. And so a huge difference to know between your debit card and your credit card is that this pulls money that is actually in your account. So with a credit card where we'll get more into that, but where you're borrowing the money, this is like, no, 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 we're pulling the money from the account. And so again, having to keep track of that and just making sure, that the funds are there because many times, it can swipe, but then after the fact, um, you pay 30 something dollars for a gallon of milk. So, so just keeping that in mind. Also, you'll see that places that accept credit cards, um, when you go to like, let's say you're ordering something online and they say enter your credit card number, now you're able to use this, but you're actually using your funds. And so a lot of people who are like, nope, no credit cards, it's like, okay, they still have the option to enter their credit card number, but it's technically your debit card. Checks. I feel like checks are just underappreciated. So many people, I know for myself, um, my husband didn't know how to write a check. He had never used a check before. After we got married, one day I was like, "Yeah, make out a check," and he's like, "What? How do I fill this out?" I'm like, "Who are you?" So if you've never used it, which we've moved very much away from checks. I mean, there's so many payment options now where you can tap the card and use what is it with Apple Pay. And so all these things that are really modernizing like how we pay for services or products. But a check is just a way that many times that was the sort of the norm before of paying for things. And so with a check, it literally is you have your checkbook if you have checks and you make out the check. Here you see it says pay to the order, so it says, hey, here's who I'm paying the money to. It has a date, it has the amount. They write out the amount so that there's no confusion with where that decimal might be, and someone doesn't say, "No, no, no, they were paying me $15,035 rather than the 150." There's a nice little memo there, and then in the bottom right is where you would sign off. And so the person who you pay, right? They turn in that check, and then the funds it is sent from your bank to that person. This can take depending on how they process the check. I've seen where they process the check immediately because they run it, I wanna say similar to, like, a debit card where they process the check and it's like, "Hey, we're pulling the funds right away." But traditionally, a check will take longer to clear your account, that's when those funds clear. And so, same thing with this, you wanna make sure that even though those funds maybe didn't clear today, that 150 $150.35, I need it to make sure that it's sitting in the bank so when the check finally does clear, that check doesn't bounce and then I don't get a fee from my bank and possibly from Jane Doe's business. So, making sure to track the funds is going to just be so essential.
Can
And
I add one thing?
yes,
Lisa? Um, Sometimes, I know I'm old, but I still write some checks. Sometimes you want a little more proof that you paid something. either for taxes purposes or other purposes. And that's where a check's nice. A bank can prove that it went to a certain account, but a lot of banks will, if you write a check and as it's processed, they will send you a PDF file or you can get it on the account. And then you have proof. They show you the front side of what you wrote and the back side that shows that it was processed,
Yes.
just in case.
Yeah. So I actually got audited with from the IRS from a couple like from 2021, and so I had to show them proof of just so many things. And when I went through, I could get a picture of my check in my account. So I would click on the transaction and I got, and that was actually more beneficial than the transactions that I did by debit card. And it was like, well, it shows it goes to here, but it didn't give as many details as this. Also, with checkbooks, they have some checkbooks where it makes a carbon copy. So when you write
Mm.
the check and you rip out the check and you pay, you have a copy of the check right underneath it. And so that definitely can be helpful. Okay, I feel like this is just like overwhelmingly growing more and more and more, just all the different ways, unfortunately, that people are finding ways to just scam people. And so, fraudulent charges on your account is definitely something that you'll want to look at and just keep an eye out for. Um, Keeping track of what you're spending and what you expect coming in is a good idea just to make sure you can cover the funds. But also, if there's a fraudulent charge on the account, then you can say, hold on, this doesn't match up. And then it raises that red flag for you to look into. And I know me personally, I use Amazon a lot, a lot, a lot. And, when I use Amazon, I'm like, I don't remember what I ordered. Like, it's like whatever, came across my page that day. But because I keep track of how much should be coming out, then recently I saw something from Amazon that was like 11.59, and multiple things, which sometimes when you order from Amazon, they'll split it up. And so that gave me the red flag to look into that and say, okay, I don't have any orders for that. So just keeping track of what should be coming out of your account, because unfortunately, scammers are getting very sophisticated with their scamming, and they can sometimes, like in the Amazon situation, use for funds for your account to purchase things from places that you usually would purchase from. So if you're just like, oh, I do go there all the time, then it wouldn't catch your attention. But actually saying, hold on, but that amount should not have come out, or that amount should have cleared. Okay, but this one, I don't know where that came from, is just a really good way. Um, and you'll want to check with your, excuse me, you'll want to check with your bank how they handle that. Because that could be a bit of a nightmare if they're just like, sorry, depending on the bank, they might say, okay, well, we have to investigate this for a while. And then you're without those funds, depending on the length of time it takes them to investigate. Where other banks will say, hey, tell you what, we're going to put the funds back into your account temporarily while we investigate. And then if we do find that, yes, it was fraudulent charges, then you can keep that money. And if we see that no, like there was some kind of dispute maybe between you and who you purchased from, then no, we're going to take those funds back. And so that's really good to know. I had a fraudulent charge on my account about a year ago, and it was a hefty amount. And I was so grateful. And I didn't know this beforehand, so I'm glad this is the way it turned out. But I was so grateful that the bank, as soon as I brought it to their attention, they said, okay, we're going to return those funds to you temporarily. So I didn't have to go without those funds. And then once they investigated, they saw that indeed it was a fraudulent charge. So definitely just something to keep an eye on, and also be informed about with your bank, like, well, what do they do in situations like that? Because of course if that situation happened and you have to go without those funds, you still have bills to pay, and or whatever that account is paying for, and so you don't want to be stuck. So balancing your account, bottom line is, whether it's debit cards or checks, you must keep track of your spending. Little funny pick down there when it says when you find out you have no money, right? You don't want it to be a surprise that there's no money in the account. That's a bad surprise, right? Off to the left, I just show a picture where it shows the account being negative. And it's a little blurry, but the very top one actually says overdraft paid fee. $36. So it shows that their visit to Target and Uber, it made them go negative, and then they paid it. The bank paid it, but then they're like, "Hey, but now we're gonna charge you $36 for it." So, just digging that hole, right? So just making sure you keep track of your bills. You know what's coming out. Maybe you have things that are set to come out, which is super helpful. Like, I know every month that these things are gonna come out, but then also, groceries, like, sometimes groceries will be this amount or maybe another amount or gas, and so just keeping track of that somewhere. Um, with checks, people, balance their checking book and they'll say, "Okay, this is gonna come out." And so you can still do that with debit cards and all of that. Some banks actually have an option where you can plan above, you can actually add in, "Hey, this is going to come out," so you could see the true balance. My bank currently doesn't do it, but that's one thing I missed that with my old bank. I had the things that I knew were going to come out, and so I'd say add item and I'd type it in, and then it would update my balance on what I really had left in there after everything that was going to cleared. Super convenient feature. So which bank do you choose, right? There's a massive amount of banks out there now. You can go online and find banks that don't have any actual physical buildings, brick and mortar, but they're like online banks. And so tons of banks out there. Some things to consider are, what are the monthly fees for the type of account that I'm looking for? And when can they be waived? Sometimes as a student, you can get fees waived, or also if you're military or if you have association with military in your family, they could waive fees. So that's something to consider. It's like, hey, if I can save money that way, that's whatever the fee is, that's money towards gas or whatever. Just the general fees that you could incur. So hopefully you won't have to worry about overdraft fees. But if it happens, are they like charging you $50? Um, ATM fees, if you are like, "Hey, I don't have, that ATM nearby," or, when I'm at school, I'm not close to one of those ATMs, what kind of fees am I gonna, be able to, or what kind of fees will I get if I use a out of network ATM? How easily can you access your funds? And so if there is not a brick and mortar building, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's not a good bank if they don't have a brick and mortar building, but if you want to be able to go into a bank or go to an ATM and get those funds right away, that's something to consider. Like I said, some banks don't have those in-person bank centers. And if they do, sometimes it's just like, oh, a city over. So, and then what are the perks offered through banking with specific banks? There are so many banks that will offer you incentives and say, "Hey, come and start a checking account with us and we'll give you $300." And then, they'll say you have to stay with us for this long though, but you can establish your account with them and you can get a sign up bonus. There's overdraft protection, interest yielding. Some checking accounts will still give you a little pinch of some interest. And so just some things to consider, like, what is the best fit for you? So how to open that account, you can go online. Um, Even usually if it's a brick and mortar bank, they still have an option where you can go online. But of course, you'll still have to submit like identification, like a driver's license, just showing if you're doing, if you want to automatically uh, uh, your wherever you get paid from, if you want it to be automatically drafted into your bank, then you'll have to turn in paperwork with that from your employer. And so, tons of options to do it online, but you might want to actually go into a bank and visit the bank as well. Just so you can say, okay, if I had to come in and I wanted to talk to somebody maybe in the future about opening different types of accounts or doing loans or investments, like, is this a place that I want to bank? I mean, they have your money, so you want to feel comfortable with them. And then savings, just this is just a little side note. So saving for the future, a 401k, that's actually something that you do through your employer, that you can do through your employer. And it's a retirement account. And they will give you options on how to navigate that if they do offer that. But traditional versus Roth, and basically that just gets into like, hey, they're going to tax, the government is going to tax your money. So it's like, do you want us to take taxes now? Or do you want that to put that money away, put that money away, and then when you get it out later on in retirement, we'll tax it then. But this is just something to definitely look into and possibly take advantage of. Sometimes people don't think about retirement until way later, and I'm sure that they're always like, I wish I would have thought about retirement just a little bit earlier, because all that money, that you're making, especially if your employer says that they'll match it or they'll do whatever a certain percentage. That's just something that you really want to consider to take in advantage of. One thing though is for this savings specifically is for retirement. And so if you're like, man, I really, that money's piling up and it's just like burning a hole in my virtual pocket. And so you try to snag some of that money. There are penalties on it because it's and they're usually heavy penalties. I believe at least some of the accounts I looked into, it was like 30%. So think about that. Out of $100, just $100, they would take 30 of those dollars. So that's pretty hefty. So just making sure that that's money that you're like, nope, I'm not even thinking about it until I'm ready to retire and enjoy that next chapter. Okay. So now we'll go into credit cards with Professor Falkenstein.
All right. Now, the the interesting part, because there's so many different things to know with credit cards. Um, we have unsecured versus secured. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. There's credit limits. You definitely, absolutely have to read the fine print on credit cards, even more so than banks, because they sneak things in there. And then later they'll send you an email or something in the mail and sneak more little fine print things in there for you to look at. There are again fees, just like banks, because credit cards are letting you use their money for a little while until you pay it. So there's late fees. Sometimes it's a set amount, sometimes it's a percent. You'll have to pay a minimum payment. I have some spreadsheets to look at in just a second. Um, the one thing though is that credit cards are almost always protected from fraud, whereas debit cards, you really need to talk to the bank to find out if they're protected or not. Um, like we use Discover. Discover is amazing about fraud. As a matter of fact, they even message us if they see something. We live here in Texas, and one time they saw that we were buying pizza and going to the movies in South Carolina and in Ohio and somewhere else. There was no way we could physically have done that. And so the fraudsters were just checking out to see if we would notice, and Discover noticed for us. So that's really great that credit cards will help with that. Um, you always, if you're going to use a credit card, debit card too, you always want to check the machines that you're putting your credit card into. We had our credit card hacked because we were going to this one gas station, and apparently the fraudsters can fit this little tape of some kind into the machine. And if you don't wiggle the machine, it reads your credit card and then they start spending. So you've got to really watch. They actually did it 3 times to us till we switched to, we're slow. We finally switched to another gas station and it didn't have the trouble. But even if, you know, Professor Bobe was talking about the, you know, paying, like putting your card on there with the chip, or now we all have watches that you can pay. Um, that is good, although you got to be careful, because if you hand someone your credit card and they go back and pay, like, at a restaurant or at a bar, they have machines that they could swipe too and take your. I know it sounds all scary, but in this day and age, you've got to watch for that. And then never ever give away your username or password for anything, for a bank, for a credit card, anything. Always say, if they call you and ask for your username and password, say, I don't have time right now, I'll call you back. And then go to the actual site and call them that way, because most of these companies will not ask for that from you. They might ask for a special code you have or ask for something else, but not for your username and password because they have that.
Can I add something really quick there?
Yes, please.
So I had an experience where my phone rang and it said, whatever our bank was at that time, USAA. It said it on my phone. And only because I had received scam calls before that said something, and then you pick up and you can tell, like, I still didn't make the connection, but that was at least on my brain. But was like, "Oh, the bank's calling." So I pick up and I'm like fumbling in the house with like bags and my dogs are jumping. And so I was very distracted. And the lady on the phone sounded very professional. She said, "Hi, I'm calling from USAA. And are you in?" And she named some other state at Foot Locker. No, I'm not. And so I'm like, "Oh, she's helping me." Okay, well, what can you tell me the last place you used your card? And so luckily I couldn't I couldn't remember the name that it showed up on in my account. So I said, "Well, it's called this, but and I said, "Let me open my account real quick." And then she says, "Okay, just so you know though, the Foot Locker is not gonna show up because," and I guess I threw her off a little bit, but thank goodness for that, because then she proceeded to ask me for my username, and she didn't ask for my password, and I just told her, I just feel uncomfortable." I said, "I know you're probably trying to help me," and I felt bad because I thought the phone said it, and she says, "Ma'am, look on the phone. You can tell where I'm calling from." And she said, "Don't worry, you're not gonna give me your password. You're gonna text it somewhere." And then I was like,
Wow.
"Uh." But still, I thought this lady's trying, and I said, I kept apologizing. I said, "I'm so sorry. I know you're trying to help me, but let me text my husband real fast." Well, we got disconnected and I thought I hung up on her and I'm like, "Oh man, she probably thinks I'm a jerk." Well, come to find out, that unfortunately happened to somebody else. And then, once the scam has happened, then the word spreads. But I say that to say that even if it says that on the phone, that, they will not ask for your username and password. So that's just my little testimony of not
Yeah,
falling for it.
let me tell another one real quick. The um the police and the sheriff will not call you to tell you that you're in trouble, like for missing jury duty. They won't do that. They'll come find you if they're really upset with you, or they'll email you something, or mail you something. But and they definitely will not tell you to go buy store cards, like have you go to the 7-Eleven and have you buy those cards. So please just keep your head about you when these things, because it's very scary. Sometimes they're saying they're the IRS and you're going to go to jail. So your brain starts going all over the place. But definitely, if your hackles go up on your back, definitely say, "Well, I need to be able to call someone back or get someone to go with you if they try to have you meet somewhere." All right, enough of that.
Yeah. Go
Um,
ahead.
just want you to know we don't want any of you guys to lose your hard-earned money with fraud. I wish those people would spend as much time that they spend frauding people, trying to do other things. They could cure cancer. They could do all kinds of things. Um, so that one more thing with the credit card is a lot of them also will let you sign up for that. They text you every single time your credit card is used. That is terrific. Except my husband has it, and so then he'll text me and say, "Did you buy whatever?" I'm like, "Stop stalking me." But that helps too. So we have lots of different kinds of credit cards. We do have student credit cards that you can get just for being a student. They usually have a low amount of credit, but that's okay. It gets you going and lets you start getting a credit rating. Again, read the fine print. Store credit cards, they're usually a little bit easier to get, but they do have high interest rates and again, low credit limits, but it's a good way to get going with a credit history. And then we have secured credit cards, which I think I talk about on the next page, but secured credit cards are if you really have a bad credit score and you're trying to get your credit score up. You literally put money in there. So it's kind of like a bank account. But what's great is uh, it looks like a credit card um, for the, my brain, what are those credit companies called that keep track of it? There's
Oh,
three of
like
them.
I know what you're talking about.
I know. Oh my goodness, it's leaving my brain.
Like
Anyway,
Experian.
right, Experian's
Experian, all
one
of
of
them.
them.
Yes.
And so this looks like a credit card. So it looks like you're paying off every month, which is terrific. You want that on your credit score instead of just using your bank account. All right, let's go to the next one. So yeah, just be careful with these. They're kind of handed out like candy, but you still have to pay it back. So you'll prove you're a student. You probably have to have income or you'll have to co-sign with someone. But you still have to keep track of what you're spending. If you go over, I've got some spreadsheets to show you of what's going to happen. Stores, um, you probably still have to prove that you have income or co-sign, but this is another way to start to get credit or to like sometimes when we were younger, we'd have a card that we only used for gas. So we'd get a Walmart card and we only used it for gas. And so we could track our gas spending. But the problem with these is you can only use it at that store. So if you have a Walmart credit card, you can't necessarily use it somewhere else. All right. And then secured, I just talked about. So again, you'd have to put the money down up front and it's going to sit in that credit card and you can't charge any more than how much money you put in there, but it really is terrific for building credit. I think we can get going. I think I put too many slides of what's going on with, but we'll share. You'll see these slides if you want to go back and look at them, and you can see the difference between these different ways of getting credit. All right, I loved this when I saw it. I borrowed money, and they expect me to pay it back. So here's the bad news. So every month you'll start charging, you'll get your credit card in the mail, you'll be very excited, you'll start charging, you'll try not to charge your whole limit. You absolutely, if you can, want to pay the entire balance. So what will happen is after a month, you'll have a cutoff point, and then they will send you a statement. And that will tell you how much you owe. And it will tell you your entire balance. And then it will also show you your monthly, your minimum payment, which we will definitely talk about in a minute. You want to pay that entire balance if you can. It's hard, I know. We've all been there, that's for sure. But if you can pay that entire balance, that's great because otherwise you're going to pay interest and you might pay late fees as well. You never want to be late. You want to at least pay the minimum payment. And that is either going to be a preset amount or it's going to be a percent of your monthly balance. Again, you got to read the fine print on that one. And of course, the credit card company is going to charge you the higher of the two because that's how they do things. They do not charge you interest on a monthly basis. Like the bank will give you interest on what we call a monthly basis, but the interest for credit cards is what we call continuous. And so the interest grows very, very fast. Okay, so here's the hard facts. And I've got spreadsheets that I'm not going to be able to explain all of the spreadsheet to you, but if you want to come see me, please do, and I can show you. Let's say you get this credit card, you charge $500 in that first month because you're like, woohoo, I have a credit card. Well, when you get the statement, it's going to say that that 500 is due, but you can't pay it. So you're going to pay the minimum. So the minimum is either 2% of the balance or a preset $25, whichever is greater. So you're not going to pay the $10, you have to pay the $25 because that's greater. Well, now you still have a balance of $475. So the even if you don't charge anything else, the next time you get a statement, you're going to have to pay. I put 21%. That's kind of average for credit cards. So you're going to pay 1/12 of that 21% because the 21% is for the whole year. For the month, you would divide that by 12. But the next time you get a statement, even if you didn't charge anything else, you would have to pay $483.31. So let me show you what happens. This is if you never charge another thing. This isn't if you keep charging. This is if you spent that 500, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to do that again. And you never charge again, but you keep only paying the minimum payment. So you can see in the middle, you've got that you're paying $25 every month. It will take you 25 months to pay this off. And the interest, not too bad. I mean, it's $107.53. But that's for money that you spent. It's gone a long time ago, and you're still paying it off. Now, let's say we just spend 1,000, so just double it. Now, so you had a good time, right, with the $1,000, but let's say you only pay the minimum and you never charge this again. This will take 68 months to pay off. So this is the power of multiplication. When Professor Bobe was talking about the 401k, I tell my students all the time about the power of multiplication. If you just put that money in there and just keep putting even the minimum in there, that power of interest and multiplication will make it grow so that you can retire. Well, that works with credit too. So not only would it take 68 months to pay off, which is a lot, also you would pay $678.29 on top of that 1,000 for that fun you had that first month. So bottom line is, whoops, definitely, if you can pay off the entire balance. If you can't, make a plan. Hopefully, you can pay off more than the minimum balance, so that those purchases are not costing you a lot more money. Okay, so there are 0% deals. So I love Lowe's has a 0% deal every once in a while, and that's how my husband and I buy appliances. But you have to be really careful, read the fine print. You have to pay it off in whatever time frame. So usually it's 2 years. So what I do, I'll buy myself a new fridge. How exciting. And I'll divide that, what it costs, by 22 months instead of 24 months, just in case I have a bad month or a Christmas month. And then I pay off that 1/22 every single month so that I don't have anything left when I get to the 2 year, because otherwise they will charge you the interest for the whole 2 years plus when you have to keep going. I like this. Your credit card info can't be used to make fraudulent charges if it's already maxed out. All right, really quick, because I know there might be some questions. I just wanted to warn you about payday loans. Again, you can come see us and we'll tell you about them. Payday loans are loans that there's little shops all over Colleen and Cove that will say that they'll give you a payday loans. There's usually no credit checks. There's very high interest. I even saw a 400% APR, which is just crazy. They usually give you a flat fee, even if if you don't end up paying interest. It's a really quick, short-term loan. So let's say you're a week from payday and you borrow some money against your paycheck. Um, so you'll get very high interest, but also they will grab it out of your bank as soon as payday. So they're going to usually ask for your bank account, which is a little scary too. And then they will grab that money. So if you don't have that money that day that you get paid, like if you have other bills coming out, then that interest is going to really start mounting. And so you'll create a cycle of debt. Now, here at CTC, if you're a student, instead of doing a payday loan, if you have an emergency, like a flat tire or something's wrong with your car or something, your utilities were crazy, we do have emergency loans at CTC. If you just put CTC Foundation in the search bar in our website, you will find the information of how you can apply for an emergency loan, because we don't want you doing this kind of thing, and also we want you to still be able to come to class and focus on your studies. All right, so we probably could go on for hours, but we're going to stop there.
All right. Well, Alyssa, are there any questions? No, we don't have any questions. Oh, okay. I do have some questions. In regards to credit score, I that's a scary place. And people are always like, oh, you're in this store. Do you want a credit card? Do you want a credit card here? Do you want there? But that all makes a hit on credit score. Um, I recently found out that searching for car insurance, different insurance companies will
Wow.
put a hit on credit too. So can you talk a little bit about the how important credit score is in getting other credit?
Yeah, I can chime in here. So basically, your credit score is it lets lenders know, like, hey, how likely are you to pay us back the money, excuse me, that we borrowed, but also how much are you borrowing? Like if you're borrowing a lot, a couple year, well, quite a few years ago, like over a decade ago, we went through this crazy medical issue. And because it had my attention, I missed a payment on our house. And it was literally by a day, but I am like very like, nope, I make payments on time. It's like, yay, I want an A for my credit score. So it goes by, it's a chart. I believe that the highest is 840. Let me see.
Yeah, it's
I
it's
can
up there.
is it okay? So it's like, oh, 850 is the highest you can go. And so like they consider like 300 to 629 bad, 630 to 689 fair, 690 to 719 good, and then 720 and above excellent. And so an excellent credit score says, hey, this person is reliable to lend to because they will likely pay you back and they're not just also borrowing necessarily from everybody's. But I missed that one payment by like literally a day. Like it was like, oh yeah, got to pay bills. Paid the payment and it remained on our credit for I believe like at least like 3 years. It might have been longer,
Wow.
but I was like so hot about that because I was like, all this good, and I did reach out to the company and unfortunately they were like, no, we're not going to waive it, which I've heard that a lot of companies will if you have good standing. And we did, we had tons and tons of good payment history with them. But it dropped our credit score because now it looked like, hey, this person did not pay on time. And so paying things on time, and also even like she was saying, like applying for credit cards. So even if I get that credit card or not, because they had to check what my credit score was, it dings my credit. Car shopping. If you go car shopping, you're going to different
Mhm.
places and they're like, hey, can we run your credit? Hey, can we run your credit? It's going to ding it every single time. And so we went, I don't know if we were purchasing a home, but I had to literally explain to them why we had like 5 inquiries on our credit in the month of October the previous year. And I was like, oh, we were car shopping. And unfortunately, we ran our credit every single time. So, definitely something to consider when people are like, yeah, I want to see if you apply for this credit card today and you get this much percentage off your, it seems very
Mhm.
like, man, I can't pass up this deal. They're going to give me 15% off my purchase. But in the bigger picture, you're affecting your credit score. So just something to consider.
Right,
Yeah,
because
well,
they also not just paying back, but they look at how much credit you have. Like if you have every shop in town, you have a credit card, um, that will count against you as well.
Because they're
well,
like, okay, this person is living on borrowed money. So how much money will they rather, how much money do they really have to pay us back?
well, and also I learned the hard way. Even if you do pay off a loan, make sure looking at your credit scores often,
Yeah.
because I looked at it and I'm like, why do I have 3 credit cards open? And I had gone back to those were car loans, or those were a loan for an HVAC unit. And they said, oh, well, we know you finished paying off, but we left it open just in case you want to borrow something else. And so you really got to go back and close everything, and make sure everything is closed and don't assume it's closed. you know I wanted to get back to the fraud that you were talking about. um I had an instance where I had closed my mother's account, and I got in the mail something, and it said something about the closed account, and I don't remember what else, and I ended up calling the bank, and they had me read it to them, and then they had me send them a copy. That was a mailed. Usually they say if you get something in the mail, that's safe. Um, this was a mailed scam. And
Wow.
so, don't answer the phone, don't give them messages, but even now in the mail, they're sending scam info. So you kind of have to sit on everything, or just be poor, like the meme said. They can't steal anything from you if you have no money
Yeah.
in it.
Tricks on them
So
if there's no money there.
that's right. I got one in the mail that was a cruise line credit card, and they said you filled out all the information, and it's in it was a letter, like you said, you filled out all the information except you have to do one more thing. Go to this website. And I thought, I don't go on cruises anymore. There is no way I would have done this. So I actually just left it because, and I'm watching it, I don't want, but they didn't have, it looked pretty legit, but it didn't have any phone numbers. There was just something a little off because they've gotten much better. They used to make it that, things didn't look quite right or there'd be typos, but that doesn't happen anymore. They
Yeah,
look legit.
they've refined it for sure.
Well, cool. Very good information. Thank you so much for this. And it's not just people starting out. Sometimes it's people who, have just, this hasn't been their job in their family. And then all of a sudden it is their job, and it's like,
That's
I
true.
don't even know how to save money. I didn't even know what a CD was until we had a guest on one of our virtual events that said, put your money in a CD. What is a CD? You know, it's so that the bank can help you save money because you can't save money on your own. So
Awesome.
anyway, lots of great information. So guys, you know that of course, our math professors are going to have answers to all of this. And they can reach out and, y'all, where can they find y'all? At the planetarium building, huh? If you have
Yeah.
any questions.
We're upstairs. At the Math Express office, if you just go up the stairs and hang a right, we're down there, and any of us here in the math department can help you. And then business is on the other wing, so they can help you too.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing your information today. We are so excited that you guys wanted to get involved. And before we go, I just want to remind everybody this Wednesday, we have Getting a Job. So if you want money to put in a bank, you have to get a job first. So we're going to have
That's
our
good.
career services that are going to be talking on Wednesday. So thank you again, everybody. And you guys have a good day. It looks like the weather's getting better on us. Of course, it rains on the weekend.
Yep.
So,
Of course.
all right. Thank you.
Awesome.
And
Thank
Bye.
you.
you're welcome. And Alyssa, if you will take us out, but you guys don't leave yet.